These are the most interesting historical photographs and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. Soviet female snipers shoot from a trench somewhere on the Eastern Front, 1943. Sniper decoys were common during the Second World War. Here is a decoy in the form of a helmet, upon seeing which an enemy soldier fired from another trench and thus gave his position to the sniper. Elvis Presley met with President Richard Nixon in the Oval Office on December 21, 1970. The musician unexpectedly offered his services in the fight against drugs and organized crime, hoping to get a federal agent badge. The meeting was not announced in advance and later became one of the most requested photos in the US National Archives. This is the Dresden Codex, one of the 4 surviving codices of the Maya civilization, created between about 1200 and 1250. It contains astronomical calculations, ritual tables and prophecies written in glyphic script on Life.wav paper. The codex was discovered in Europe in the 16th century and is considered the most important source on the Maya calendar system and their observations of the cycles of Venus. The warning sign was installed on March 25, 1952, during the Korean War by a soldier from Company D of the US Army. A damaged helmet, punctured in battle, was used as a visual reminder of the importance of wearing protective gear. The caption, "The wearer of this helmet still lives. Wear yours," appealed to other military personnel, urging them not to neglect helmets in a combat zone. The half-timbered house in this photo was built in Hamburg in 1524 and has existed for almost 4 centuries. By the end of the 19th century, it had become one of the oldest residential buildings in the city, but despite its historical value and the protests of citizens, it was demolished in 1910. A picture taken in the late 1890s is one of the last visual evidence of its existence. During the First World War, Austrian soldiers built a network of tunnels with a total length of more than 12 kilometers inside the Marmolada Glacier, located in the Dolomites. This bridge connected the ice galleries hidden in the thickness of the glacier and was used for movement, shelter from shelling and storage of supplies. The picture dates back to 1917, at the height of the ice war on the Italian front. The photo shows a group of Japanese samurai and officers from the Bakumatsu period, the end of the Tokugawa shogunate, 1860s. They wear traditional hakama and kimono, and their weapons, katana swords, are attached to their belts as a symbol of their status. It was a transitional period in the history of Japan, preceding the Meiji Restoration and the modernization of the army according to the Western model. On May 26, 1967, during the Battle of Pleiku in South Vietnam, American soldiers found themselves under heavy enemy fire. The picture captures a moment of emotional exhaustion and mutual support between the fighters, one of whom comforts a comrade after losses. The ceremonial armour made for Henry III of France in 1570 was not military equipment, but a symbol of power and status. The rich engraving, gilded surface and ornaments in the style of the French Renaissance reflect the highest level of skill of the gunsmiths of that time. Such armour was used at official ceremonies and had an exclusively representative function. The picture was taken in 1918 in the city of Juvisy, France, on the eve of the end of the First World War. American Red Cross nurses served soldiers of the Algerian colonial unit of the French army, the so-called tirailleurs. Red fezzes and military uniforms are typical of the North African troops, attracted by the metropolis to participate in the European conflict. A photo from early 1919 captured a World War I veteran playing the violin with a prosthetic leg. Having lost his arm at the front, he uses a mechanical structure to hold the instrument, demonstrating adaptation and willpower. Such cases were not uncommon among war invalids who sought to return to life and craft, despite severe injuries. Senet is one of the oldest board games popular in ancient Egypt, more than 5,000 years ago. This copy belonged to Pharaoh Tutankhamun, and dates back to about 1333 BC. The game board and figures are made of wood, inlaid with hieroglyphs, and were kept in his tomb as a symbol of the soul's passage to the afterlife. In 1944, after the Allied landings in Normandy, British breweries began delivering beer to the front in an unconventional way, by attaching barrels to Supermarine Spitfire fighters. Empty fuel tanks or specially converted mounts were used, and flights were performed informally, in their spare time from combat missions. The image shows the original sketches of the Pac-Man game, made by Toru Iwatani manually on graph paper in the late 1970s. These sketches include early versions of the mazes, enemy shapes, and interface used in the development of the legendary arcade game. The red hieroglyphic seal, secretly, emphasizes the confidentiality of materials at the concept stage. In 1994, amid the Zapatista uprising and growing protest sentiments among the indigenous population, Indians in San Cristobal de las Casas, Chiapas, Mexico, toppled the monument to Christopher Columbus from its pedestal. This action was a symbolic act of rejecting the colonial legacy and fighting for the rights of indigenous peoples. The future actor Bela Lugosi is depicted here in the uniform of a lieutenant in the Austro-Hungarian army during the First World War. A native of Hungary, he served on the Eastern Front, and after the war emigrated to the United States. In 1931, Lugosi gained worldwide fame by playing the iconic role of Count Dracula in the Universal film of the same name, becoming an icon of classic horror. A 1978 photo taken in South Korea shows a street food outlet using a McDonald's sign without any connection to the actual chain. In those years, there were no official restaurants of this brand in the country yet. The first McDonald's appeared in Seoul only in 1988. A snapshot from the time of the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918-1920 demonstrates the daily lives of citizens who take precautions. All passengers and police officers wear masks, which has become a mandatory practice in public places due to the rapid spread of the virus. The clay tablet with the layout of the building, created by the Sumerians around 3000 BC, is considered one of the oldest known architectural drawings. It shows rooms and passageways with cuneiform symbols, probably indicating the functions of the rooms or their sizes. Such schemes were used in the design of buildings in Mesopotamia, demonstrating a high level of organization and the beginnings of engineering thinking already in the Bronze Age. The photo was taken by Marion Post Walcott in June 1940 near Natchitoches, Louisiana. Two college students are voting on the highway in the hope of reaching their next destination, near the Esso gas station. In 1901, one of the first known attempts at same-sex marriage took place in the Spanish city of La Coruna. Marcela Gracia Ibeas and Eliza Sanchez Loriga deceived the church authorities. Eliza introduced herself as a man named Mario Sanchez. They were married in a Catholic church, but soon the truth was revealed, causing a scandal. The photo shows bicycle troops with dogs at a parade in Moscow in 1938. Such units existed in the Red Army before the outbreak of World War II and were intended for mobile intelligence and communications. Bicycles made it possible to move quickly through difficult terrain, and service dogs were used to send messages, guard and search for the wounded. In a photo from 1910, the last Russian Emperor, Nicholas II, watches an elephant bathing in the pond of Tsarskoye Selo. Exotic animals were kept in the imperial possessions as curiosities and symbols of prestige. Elephants were often presented to Russian monarchs by foreign rulers and embassies. A 1974 photograph captures Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, at the moment when he humorously reacts to the headline of the British newspaper Evening Standard. During this period, Ali actively performed not only in the ring, but also in public life, remaining an influential figure in the struggle for the rights of African Americans and against the Vietnam War. A year later, he scored a legendary victory over George Foreman in a rumble in the Jungle Match. In 1977, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had already won the title of Mr. Universe and was starting his film career, appeared at the Cannes Film Festival in a spectacular photo shoot on the beach. In the picture, he poses among the dancers of the Folies Bergère Cabaret in retro costumes, emphasizing the contrast between bodybuilding and theatrical aesthetics. The photo shows Al Capone, one of the most famous gangsters in the United States, taken around 1930. Leading a Chicago crime syndicate during Prohibition, he controlled a network of illegal alcohol trafficking, gambling, and prostitution. Despite his numerous crimes, Capone was convicted of tax evasion in 1931 and spent several years in Alcatraz prison. A hut made of mammoth bones, discovered in Mezherik, Ukraine, in 1965, dates back about 15,000 years ago and belongs to the late Paleolithic. Such structures were built from skulls, tusks, and large mammoth bones covered with skins and served as hunters' homes. This is not a real meeting of the Queen group with Queen Elizabeth II. The photo shows a famous parody scene where a doppelganger actress poses with the band members in the image of the Queen. Crannogs are ancient island structures built in lakes and marshy waters of Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. The first of them appeared in the Neolithic, about 5,000 years ago, and were used until the Middle Ages. They were built of stone, wood, and peat, and served as fortified dwellings, shelters, or status residences. The photo shows the platform of the Mount Washington Cog Railway, located in New Hampshire, USA. Opened in 1869, it became the world's first mountain railway with a gear mechanism. The train takes passengers to the top of Mount Washington, the highest point in New England. This line remains in operation to this day as a tourist attraction. The photo captured a miner with coal dust on his face, resting after a shift, probably in the middle of the 20th century in the USA or Great Britain. His smile against the background of grueling work symbolizes the resilience of the working class of that time. The metal badge on the helmet served as the miner's identifier at the entrance to the mine, a security measure adopted in the coal industry. A pair of 1848 Colt Dragoon revolvers were presented by Abraham Lincoln to Emir Abdelkader in 1860 as a sign of respect for the protection of Christians in Damascus. The photo shows the pumping of Soviet oil into tanks for shipment to Nazi Germany, 1940. This happened within the framework of economic cooperation between the USSR and the Third Reich after the signing of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The USSR supplied resources including oil, grain, and metals in exchange for manufactured goods and technology. Japanese schoolgirls practiced blows with bamboo spears as part of the General Mobilization Training, 1940. Under conditions of total militarization, teenagers were taught the basics of hand-to-hand combat, drill discipline, and working with edged weapons. Bamboo spears, tak-yari, were considered an affordable weapon for the population in case of hostilities in Japan. Children from the London school Springfield House are treated for tuberculosis in the fresh air, 1932. The medical practice of that time assumed that sunlight and clean air accelerated recovery. Patients spent hours lying in special outdoor rooms, even in the cold season. This was a common technique before the advent of antibiotics. Residents of Serbia celebrate on the wreckage of the American stealth aircraft F-117 Nighthawk, shot down on March 27, 1999. This was the first time an invisible aircraft was destroyed, which was a serious blow to the reputation of the US Air Force. The plane was shot down by a Soviet-made S-125 system and the pilot ejected and was evacuated. Competition for the most elegant style of smoking, Paris, 1932. In the 1930s, tobacco companies actively promoted smoking as a symbol of women's independence and fashion, and such events became part of advertising campaigns. The participants were evaluated according to the manner of holding a cigarette, posture, and expressiveness. Bell Model 30 helicopter test, 1946. This is an early prototype developed by Arthur Young for Bell aircraft. There are 7 people on board to check the cargo capacity. The model became the forerunner of the first certified Bell 47 helicopter. Mona Lisa returns to the Louvre, 1913. After 2 years of searching, Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece was found in the possession of Italian Vincenzo Peruggia, who stole the painting in 1911 and hid it in a hotel room in Florence. The picture was taken on the day of the triumphant return. A complete set of equipment for the crew of the American M4 Sherman tank, laid out for inspection, 1943. The photo shows weapons, tools, ammunition, radio communications, first aid kits, and personal belongings of tankers. Such an arsenal was supposed to ensure autonomy and survival in any conditions. Yuri Gagarin immediately after landing on April 12, 1961. He is still wearing the SK-1 spacesuit, in which he made the first ever orbital flight around the Earth. The photo was taken shortly after the evacuation and its transfer to the Soviet military. The place of the driver in the German heavy tank Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger. The tank was controlled using an automobile steering wheel, levers and pedals. The cramped cabin housed monitoring devices, an engine start knob and other controls. During the First World War, soldiers created realistic dummy heads to lure out enemy snipers. These dummies were placed over the trenches, fixing the enemy's firing positions. The photo shows a workshop for making such baits, France around 1917. US border crossing pass for non-immigrant foreigners, 1943. Such certificates were issued to persons temporarily residing or working in the country and contained detailed information about their appearance and biography. A mock-up of the concept of the first space station based on the Atlas rocket, presented by NASA in 1958. Inside the transparent model, you can view the proposed layout of crew compartments and equipment. Group lesson on general physical training in the gym of the Philadelphia Elks Club, 1930. The rope exercise was used for synchronized strength and endurance training under the supervision of an instructor. A huge overgrown Buddha statue in Burma, Myanmar, photographed during the British colonization. After the seizure of the territory in the 19th century, the British administration limited the influence of Buddhist monasteries, considering religion an obstacle to controlling the population. Astronaut David Scott goes into outer space from the command module of the Apollo 9 mission. The photo was taken on March 6, 1969 by astronaut Russell Schweickart. It was the first spacewalk by an American astronaut in a full moon suit with an autonomous life support system. Czech legionnaires dressed in fur sheepskin coats guard the train during the Siberian expedition in conditions of 40-degree frost. The photo was taken in 1918 against the background of a carriage with the inscription, Omsk Reinforced Security. The legionnaires participated in the Russian Civil War and controlled part of the Trans-Siberian Railway. In 1952, in India, women manually evaporated sugarcane juice to produce unrefined sugar known as jaggery. The photo shows a simple installation, a clay pot, an open fire, a primitive shelter, and a complete lack of equipment. Everything happened outdoors, with minimal resources and complete dependence on physical labor. Nikola Tesla demonstrates the transfer of energy without wires in his laboratory in Colorado Springs in 1899. It uses resonant coils, creating a powerful electromagnetic field capable of lighting lamps and transmitting energy over a distance. These experiments became the basis for further research in the field of radio communications and wireless power transmission. Soviet pilots from the 588th Night Bomber Regiment rest between sorties at the front in 1942. This all-female regiment was nicknamed the Night Witches by German soldiers because of the silent raids on U-2 biplanes. During the war, they flew more than 23,000 combat missions and became a symbol of bravery and determination. The photo shows the eruption of Vesuvius in March 1944, the last to date. The volcano spewed a column of ash about 8 km high, destroying several villages, including San Sebastiano and Massa di Somma. At that time, Allied troops were in Naples, and the eruption was one of the few cases when a natural disaster occurred against the background of military operations of the Second World War. The picture was taken shortly after the construction of the Berlin Wall began in 1961. People on both sides could still see and talk to each other through windows and temporary barriers. Within a few days, such scenes became rare. The GDR authorities quickly sealed up the accessible passages and windows, and communication between East and West became impossible. An 1879 photograph captures the traditional headdress of a bride from the Voronezh province. The patterned kokoshnik with beads, gold embroidery and metal ornaments was not only a status symbol, but also part of an ancient ritual. American actress Carol Channing arrived in London on April 30th, 1970, to perform at the Drury Lane Theatre. Her eccentric facial expressions and vivid image immediately attracted the attention of the press and the public. Channing was known for her unique voice and charisma, becoming one of the icons of American musical theatre. A 4.3x 3.3 cm bronze purse with 6 gold coins was found on the territory of a Celtic settlement in Manching, Germany. The artifact dates back to about 200 BC and is a rare example of a personal treasure trove held by Celtic nobility in the late Latène period. Women manually dig anti-tank ditches on the outskirts of Moscow during the German offensive in 1941. These defensive structures were created urgently and massively in conditions of a shortage of equipment, and the civilian population, including collective farmers, students and employees of enterprises, participated in their construction. In 1959, Montreal Canadiens goalkeeper Jacques Plante took to the ice for the first time wearing a protective mask after being hit in the face by a puck. Despite resistance from coaches and tradition, he insisted on continuing to play in a mask, ushering in a new era of goaltending equipment and changing safety standards in hockey. Jacqueline Kennedy and Nina Khrushchev met in the 1960s during a diplomatic visit. The contrast in the style and image of the two First Ladies became a symbol of the cultural differences between the United States and the USSR at the height of the Cold War. Eartha Kitt became the first black actress to play Catwoman in the 1966 Batman series. In the photo, she's with the Joker, a character played by Cesar Romero. Their images went down in history as part of one of the first TV projects to adapt DC Comics for a wide audience. Mobile Butcher Shop in London, 1972. Such vans were popular in working-class neighbourhoods where stationery stores were not always available. Meat was sold directly from the truck window, and the trade was conducted on site without pre-cooling, which was considered the norm before the advent of modern sanitary standards. Francesco de Bernocchi with an early prototype of a wireless iconograph, early 1910s. This device was a precursor to fax communication. It transmitted images over a radio channel. In 1912, Bernocchi received a patent for the technology, becoming one of the pioneers of wireless transmission of visual information. A group of workers in a trolley suspended from cables above the quarry of the Kimberley Diamond Mine, South Africa, 1880s. Such a system was used to transport people and materials to great depths in conditions of limited access and the absence of mechanized lifts. In the 1960s, the Nepalese authorities introduced a unique rule. All taxis were required to have a tiger color and an image of a tiger's head on the hood. This made it easier to identify vehicles and served as a visual symbol for tourists and locals. In 1991, Alan Chumak, one of the most famous telehypnotists and healers of the post-Soviet space, practiced sessions right on the streets of Moscow. His forehead touches and gestures were considered healing, and many believed in his ability to charge water and heal diseases with the power of thought. The test of the jet ejection system, USA, 1963. The photo shows the moment of operation of the emergency seat installed in the nose of the decommissioned aircraft. Such tests were conducted to evaluate the effectiveness of pilot rescue in emergency situations at supersonic speeds. A football match in Iraq against the backdrop of the outbreak of war on March 29, 2003. Despite the fighting and visible clouds of smoke from the bombing outside the stadium, the players continue the game and the audience remains in the stands. On the upper tier there is a portrait of Saddam Hussein, a symbol of the regime of that time. The Soviet experiment with the wingsuit prototype, 1935. As part of the aviation and parachute tests, designs were developed to increase the gliding range during skydiving. The soldier carries a rigidly fixed wing on his back, an analogue of modern wingsuits, but without controls and stabilization. Such projects were quickly curtailed due to the high risk. An early advertisement for Victoria's Secret, 1979. The photo shows models in lace silk sets and fluffy slippers, taken in a Victorian interior. Unlike the brand's explicit advertisements in the 1990s and 2000s, the 1970s campaign emphasized sophisticated elegance and privacy. An audience wearing 3D glasses at a stereo film screening, London, 1951. The photo was taken during the British Festival, a large-scale cultural event where scientific and technological achievements were demonstrated. Pilot Lee Brintnell at the Fokker Super Universal Aircraft, Canada, 1935. The aircraft belongs to Mackenzie Air Service Limited, one of the first airlines to provide air service in remote northern regions. The Fokker Super Universal has been widely used in harsh Arctic conditions due to its robust design and ski-off capability. Danny Thomas, the famous American actor, comedian and producer, is pictured aboard the luxury liner SS America, which arrived in Southampton on March 23, 1950. At this moment, he is happily smoking a cigar. His trademark smile and relaxed pose reflect the atmosphere of the star travel of that time. This is 4-year-old Stephen King, the future king of horror. Growing up, he became a legend of horror literature, creating stories that have been frightening and inspiring for decades. 200 stone sculptures in the Nenbutsu-ju Buddhist Temple, Kyoto, Japan. Each statue depicts different emotions, from sadness to joy. The moss covering them gives them an ancient, mysterious look. These statues create a unique atmosphere in the temple, attracting many tourists. A soldier of the First World War sends a message using a military dog. A message carrier is attached to the animal's neck. Such animals played an important role by delivering letters and information through trenches. This moment demonstrates the loyalty and indispensability of dogs in war conditions. NASA Flight Control Center at the time of the launch of the Apollo 11 mission, July 16, 1969. More than 100 specialists monitor every launch parameter. This was humanity's first step towards landing on the moon. The tension in the hall is felt even after decades. Women at a Moscow factory in 1941 make Molotov cocktails. These improvised devices were used to fight German tanks in the first months of the Great Patriotic War. Working on the production fronts was dangerous, but necessary during the war. Theodore Roosevelt inspects the construction of the Panama Canal, 1904. This is the first time that a sitting US president has traveled abroad during his term. His visit symbolized support for the project, which was supposed to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and shorten sea routes by thousands of kilometers. On April 25, 1945, Soviet and American troops met on the Elbe River near Torgau, Germany. It became a symbol of the final defeat of Nazi Germany and the coordinated actions of the Allies. The meeting was held in a warm atmosphere, despite the language barriers and different forms. Thousands of people in the picture are participants in the gold rush in Serra Pelada, Brazil, in the early 1980s. Without machinery, by hand, they dug the ground in the hope of getting rich. At its peak, up to 100,000 prospectors worked here at the same time. The area quickly turned into a hellhole full of violence, disease and chaos. Barcelona, 1915. Cows graze against the background of the unfinished Sagrada Familia Cathedral designed by Antonio Gaudí. There is a wasteland all around, no trace of tourists or city bustle. Today, it is the centre of one of the most visited places in the world. An engineer checks the electromechanical switches at the Bell System Telephone Exchange in New York, 1938. These panels handled thousands of calls per day, long before the advent of transistors. The work required jewellery precision and constant maintenance. The night attack of Soviet T-34 tanks near Kursk, July 1943. The arc of glowing tracer projectiles is captured with a long exposure. This is the largest tank battle in history, which became the turning point of the Second World War. The traditional house of a wealthy Filipino family in the 1870s, built in the colonial Spanish style. The building is made of stone and wood, with a thatched roof and an open veranda. In front of the house, there are carts pulled by carabao used as the main transport. Such houses belong to the elite and often served as the centre of social life. An aerial view of the moment of the attack on a column of German troops, 1944. Wehrmacht soldiers and equipment are under fire, presumably from Allied aircraft. The photo shows how the fighters leave their cars and try to take cover, while the explosions raise clouds of dust along the road. French soldiers wearing homemade gas masks, brasse-semeuse, 1915. Primitive protective equipment was made from bandages, cloth and glasses before the mass arrival of standard gas masks. The photo illustrates the helplessness of infantry in the face of chemical weapons at an early stage of the First World War. Rogues Gallery is a file of criminals in the New York Police Department, July 1909. The walls are covered with photographs of suspects taken using Bertillon's technique, the forerunner of modern criminology. This approach made it possible to identify repeat offenders faster. The Ford Automobile Exhibition at the Royal Albert Hall, London, 1932. More than 100 cars of different models are on display in the main arena under the giant banner 1100 Cars. The event highlighted the industrial might and mass production of automobiles during the Great Depression era. Moving a house with a team of 24 horses, 1909, Upper Midwest region of the USA. Such operations were common practice at the time, especially in conditions of harsh winters and limited equipment. Houses were placed on runners or rollers to move them to a new location without disassembly. Roald Amundsen with 2 Chukchi girls whom he adopted in 1921 during an Arctic expedition. Later, in 1924, he placed them in foster care in Canada. British media mogul Lou Grade, one of the main producers of The Muppet Show, talks with a Fozzie Bear doll. The photo was taken in 1978 at the peak of the popularity of the TV show. Grade, who was born in Odessa as Lev Vinogradsky, played a key role in promoting British television abroad. The Suchindram Anjaneya Temple in Tamil Nadu is a rare example of architecture combining Dravidian and Kerala styles. Its Gopuram, entrance tower, is decorated with tens of thousands of sculptures of Hindu deities, mythical creatures, and scenes from epics. Built in the 17th century, the temple is dedicated to 3 deities, Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, which is unique to the Hindu tradition. The multifunctional army knife of the Roman legionnaires of the 3rd century included a spoon, a knife, a fork, a toothpick, an awl, and a spatula. It is made of iron and silver and is considered one of the oldest prototypes of the Swiss knife. Such items were used by soldiers for food and hygiene in the field. The photo shows a Japanese factory for the production of music boxes, 1963. Female workers manually assemble mechanisms consisting of rollers with spikes and tongues that emit a melody when rotating. At that time, Japan was the world leader in the production of musical mechanisms. Queen Elizabeth II views marine life through the porthole of the underwater aquarium on Green Island, off the coast of Australia. This visit took place on April 27, 1970, as part of a royal tour of the Commonwealth countries. FBI agents are leading Julius Rosenberg, suspected of passing nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. The picture was taken on July 17, 1950 in New York, against the backdrop of a high-profile espionage case during the Cold War. Later, Julius and his wife, Ethel Rosenberg, became the first civilians in the United States to be executed for espionage. The Abuna Yamata Gu church is carved into a sheer cliff in Tigray region, Ethiopia, at an altitude of about 2,600 metres above sea level. Founded in the 5th century, it is decorated with rare Byzantine-style wall frescoes, preserved in their original form. You can only get inside by climbing a dangerous climb without insurance, which makes it one of the most inaccessible shrines in the world. Codex Giegos is the largest surviving medieval manuscript created in Bohemia in the 13th century. Volume 624 pages, height 92 cm, weight 79 kilos. The most famous feature is the full-size image of the devil, which is why the manuscript is called the Devil's Bible. It was written by one man in Carolingian minuscule on a parchment of 160 donkey skins. A rare photo of lightning striking near the Challenger shuttle on Launch Pad 39A of the Kennedy Space Center, August 30, 1983. Thanks to lightning rods and protective infrastructure, the ship was not damaged. This happened 2.5 years before the 1986 disaster. The facade of a butcher shop, completely hung with carcasses of game and poultry. High Wycombe, Great Britain, 1938. Such abundance served as an advertisement for quality and assortment, a practice common to the pre-war period in provincial England. Experimental protective equipment of an American soldier in France, 1917. Such prototypes of armoured suits were created during the First World War to protect snipers and scouts, but due to their bulkiness and limited mobility, they were not widely used. Students of the police school at the mock-up of the City Administration Building, USA, 1911. Such training models were used to practice the skills of patrolling and interacting with urban infrastructure. This famous photo, dubbed the Newby Church Ghost, was taken in 1963 by priest Ken Lloyd at a church in Yorkshire, England. In the picture, a tall, translucent figure resembling a hooded monk can be seen next to the altar. The height of the ghost is about 2.7 metres. The photo shows preparations for the launch of a German observation balloon in 1914 at the beginning of the First World War. Such airships and balloons were actively used for reconnaissance, adjusting artillery fire and monitoring the movement of enemy troops. A Greek man in a traditional fustanella, photographed on Ellis Island, 1902. Ellis Island was the main point of arrival for millions of immigrants to the United States at the beginning of the 20th century. British Air Force pilots undergo aerial gunner training in the early 1940s. One of the participants runs with a primitive target in the form of an airplane mounted on a pole, while the other aims a training machine gun with simulated firing. Such exercises were used to practice reaction, accuracy, and target tracking while protecting bombers in combat conditions. The race of participants in Mickey Mouse masks during the sports festival of the Mickey Mouse Club. Guildford, England, 1938. Such clubs operated under the auspices of Disney and united thousands of children across the country. German soldiers launch a wooden arrow with a propaganda leaflet attached at enemy positions. The First World War, circa 1915. This method was used to put moral pressure on the enemy before the airdrop of leaflets appeared. Fire Brigade Training, 1980s. A lifeguard practices jumping from a height into a rescue tent held by a group of colleagues. Such exercises required absolute trust, precision, and preparation in extreme conditions. 2 engineers inside a shuttle fuel tank, 1985. This is the interior space of the outer fuel tank of the Space Shuttle spacecraft, designed to store liquid hydrogen. Giant stiffeners on the walls reinforce the structure, withstanding extreme loads during startup. German Shepherd. Rin Tin Tin, one of the most famous dogs in the history of cinema, dines at the Sheraton Hotel in Chicago, 1956. A special diet was prepared for the movie star and a full-fledged table was served, which underlines the scale of the popularity of animal actors in post-war America. Photographer Victor Buller records an interview with Nikolai Vakturov, the world champion in French wrestling. There is a phonograph on the table, a device for sound recording. Russia, 1912. Promotional shoot of knitted ski masks for the whole family, published in Threads magazine. The frame features 4 models with different design options. USA, 1992. A French Farman MF.11 aircraft with La Préville type unguided missiles are mounted on the wings. These missiles were used at the beginning of the First World War against airships and ground targets. Around 1915. Prison wagons with bars pulled by horses leave the courtyard of the correctional institution. France, circa 1895. Such carriages were used to transport prisoners under the protection of gendarmes. The cover of Collier's magazine dated May 6, 1944, which depicts Soviet sniper Lyudmila Pavlichenko. During the Second World War, she became a symbol of courage. She had 3 to 9 confirmed liquidations to her credit. Her visit to the United States in 1942 caused a huge response and support, and publications like this reinforced the anti-fascist solidarity of the Allies. Bruce Lee with his wife Linda Emery and their children Brandon and Shannon Lee. The photo was taken in the early 1970s, at the peak of Lee's popularity. This picture is often called a symbol of harmony between East and West, as well as a reflection of his life values, family, philosophy, and culture. Supporters of Nelson Mandela climb onto an election poster in anticipation of his arrival in his hometown. The photo was taken in 1994 during the first democratic general elections in South Africa's history, which ended the apartheid regime. The first models of the little black dress, created by Coco Chanel in 1926, became a model of restraint and functionality. A characteristic feature of the outfit was its straight silhouette, knee length, and lack of jewelry, reflecting a departure from the lavish pre-revolutionary fashion. Colour reconstruction of the moment when a German soldier was captured by a Soviet soldier in the woods near Moscow. December 1st, 1941. The scene reflects the harsh conditions of the winter campaign and the close-range nature of the fighting. The uniform and the position of the fighters confirm the realities of the Eastern Front at one of the decisive stages of the Second World War. Hopi Indians, early 20th century, Arizona. A ceremony involving Kachin spirits, sacred intermediaries between humans and the forces of nature. The costumes symbolize the spirits of rain, fertility, and protection. Such ceremonies were held to pass on knowledge to children and keep in touch with their ancestors. Canadian soldiers on a Mark IV tank, 1918, France. This British tank was used in the First World War to break through trenches and fortifications. It was slow but revolutionary for its time. For the first time it combined armour, armament and tracked running. Logging artel in Arkhangelsk province, Russian Empire, 1910s. The photo shows a group of lumberjacks with bottles, probably vodka, resting against the background of a log cabin in a winter forest. Such artels work seasonally in the northern forests, harvesting wood for domestic consumption and export. An advertising installation in the form of a perpetual motion machine installed on a street in the USA, 1912. The design advertised Mercer's Cafe and attracted attention with a rotating wheel, symbolizing endless movement. Despite its external resemblance to the Perpetuum mobile, the device was powered by a hidden motor. 1910, Belfast, Northern Ireland. The picture shows the construction of 2 liners at the Harland and Wolff shipyard. On the left is the future Titanic, on the right is its senior sister ship Olympic. Both vessels belonged to the Olympic class and were built by order of the White Star Line Company. The coronation of Elizabeth II took place on June 2, 1953 at Westminster Abbey. The ceremony was held according to ancient traditions, with the participation of representatives of the British Commonwealth and senior government officials. It was the first coronation broadcast on television. It was watched by more than 20 million people in the UK. Soldiers from New Zealand washed their uniforms and socks on May 7, 1918, in France. Foot hygiene was crucial to prevent trench foot, a common problem among infantry in damp and muddy conditions during the First World War. The US military uses a portrait of Adolf Hitler as a target after capturing one of the German barracks in 1945. Such an act was a symbol of the moral victory of the Allies over the Nazi regime in the final phase of World War II. German motorized grenadiers during a short respite near a village in Hungary, January 5, 1945. Stehkäferzeit armoured personnel carriers and a trailer with a field kitchen are visible in the background. The picture was taken during the defensive battles of the Eastern Front in the last months of World War II. Members of the Royal Irish Constabulary, RIC, stand in formation in the courtyard of the barracks before the elections in Derry, Ireland, on February 1, 1913. The police are armed with rifles and dressed in standard uniforms with hard hats, prepared for possible riots during the period of political instability preceding the partition of Ireland. In 1963, a resident of Derinkuyu accidentally opened a passage to an ancient underground metropolis by destroying a wall in his basement. Behind it were passages leading to a multi-level complex about 85 metres deep. The city included ventilation shafts, wine and oil mills, schools, temples and shelters capable of accommodating up to 20,000 people. It was probably built in the 8th or 7th centuries BC and was used by the Hittites, Phrygians and later by Christians who were hiding from persecution. The picture captures the port of San Francisco during the gold rush around 1850. Hundreds of ships were abandoned by their crews as sailors deserted in an effort to find gold in California. The city turned out to be overflowing with ghost ships. Later, their buildings were dismantled for building materials, from which the first quarters of San Francisco were built. The design of the Soviet orbital ship Buran in one of the workshops of NPO Energia, 1982. The program was created as a response to the American space shuttle. Despite the successful unmanned flight in 1988, the project was curtailed due to the collapse of the USSR and lack of funding. The bomb machine was used by the US Navy in 1945 to crack the ciphers created by the German Enigma machine. It was based on the British Alan Turing model and allowed analysing thousands of possible key combinations per day, speeding up the decryption of intercepted messages. The year is 1956, Pepsi-Cola factory in Baltimore, USA. The picture shows a production hall with an automatic beverage bottling line in glass bottles. Such enterprises have become a symbol of the industrialization of post-war America and mass consumption. The year is 1946. Viewers in Germany laugh during the screening of the film The Great Dictator, in which Charlie Chaplin satirically portrays Hitler. The comedy, banned in Nazi Germany, became a symbol of post-war freedom of expression and a reinterpretation of the recent past. The First World War. About 15,000 Russian prisoners of war lined up for food in the city of Augusto, now Poland. The mass capture of prisoners on the Eastern Front was accompanied by difficult humanitarian conditions and became part of the largest army movements of the early 20th century. The year is 1937. Woolworth department store workers in Detroit celebrate victory after a 7-day sit-in. As a result of the protest, they achieved a 20% pay increase, a 40-hour work week and overtime pay, an important step in the history of labour rights in the United States. December 7, 1941. View of Pearl Harbor during the Japanese attack on the American naval base on the island of Oahu, Hawaii. The picture shows smoke from burning ships and explosions, as well as traces of anti-aircraft fire in the sky. This attack caused the United States to enter World War II. German police officers use early portable radios to communicate while on duty. The year is 1925. Radio technology in law enforcement agencies was just beginning to be introduced and was considered an advanced technology. Such devices made it possible to quickly coordinate the actions of units without using a telephone network. The oldest and most complete Bible on earth. Some believe that the Ethiopian Bible is the most complete, as it includes more books than other canonical versions, including the famous Book of Enoch. The Ethiopian Bible is written in the Ge'ez language and dates back at least to the 6th century. It was also the first illustrated Christian Bible. Thonis Herakleion, also known as Herakleion, was an important port city in ancient Egypt, which was eventually flooded and sank into the Mediterranean Sea. This was most likely due to a series of earthquakes and the resulting tsunami. The city was discovered in 2000 by underwater archaeologists at a depth of about 10 meters, 6 kilometers from the coast.